On June 14, 2025, the USS Princeton was carrying out another routine freedom of navigation patrol in the South China Sea when her SPY-1 radar detected something that nearly kicked off World War III. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, previously loitering at 200 kilometers, suddenly surged from 18 to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. What the Americans didn't know was that the Zhangzhong's captain had just received direct orders from Beijing: intercept the Americans and force them to back down. But Beijing was about to relearn a painful lesson. Challenging the US Navy in open water is still one of the dumbest ideas in modern warfare. The Nimitz carrier strike group seen here had been doing what US sailors have done flawlessly for 75 years, keeping the world's most critical shipping lanes open so Chinese factories could keep selling their budget electronics to Best Buy. They were 180 nautical miles from the nearest Chinese claimed land, operating in fully international waters where 3.4 trillion in global trade flows every year. The strike group's mission was classic freedom of navigation. Predictable course, transparent intentions, professionalism that separates real navies from floating political militias. At 9:26, the radar track was confirmed. A Type 052D destroyer, threat level moderate to high. Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer watched the Chinese vessel's vector with the calm confidence of someone standing behind 122 vertical launch cells, each one holding enough firepower to reduce an enemy destroyer to scrap metal in seconds. The SPY radar, arguably the most advanced naval sensor ever built, painted the Chinese ship with such clarity that operators could identify almost every antenna and deck feature. At the Chinese destroyer's current speed, it would enter weapons engagement range in 17 minutes. The math was brutal for the Chinese. The destroyer's YJ-18 anti-ship missiles could cross the remaining distance in under 4 minutes after launch. But Princeton's SM-6s, with a reach of roughly 240 nautical miles, could swat them out of the sky before they even stabilized their flight path. At 9:29, the captain asked for a probable intent assessment. The answer: at this speed and heading, they'll be in weapons release range in 14 minutes. Recommendation: go to general quarters. But the captain responded with classic American confidence: let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves first. And even that was generous. The South China Sea was crowded with commercial traffic, 46 merchant ships within 50 miles, a Singapore-flagged container ship loaded with semiconductors, a South Korean LNG tanker worth $200 million, all depending on the US Navy to ensure safe passage. If Beijing wanted to turn international waters into its personal paddling pool, it would first have to win a fight against the US Navy, something that has happened exactly never. At 9:30, Princeton's cooperative engagement capability automatically shared all threat data to the entire strike group. The Nimitz, 104,600 tons of American diplomacy carrying 90 of the world's most advanced aircraft, adjusted flight operations with the precision of a Swiss chronograph. Destroyers Chenghoon and Kidd maneuvered to form a defensive perimeter that would make any Chinese attack a suicide mission. At 9:35, things escalated. An E-2D Hawkeye, orbiting at 25,000 feet, detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier Shandong. Radar signatures indicated J-15 fighters, climbing hard and heading south, eager but hopelessly outmatched. Air controllers spotted something unintentionally hilarious. The J-15s were struggling to climb, likely because their ski jump launch system restricted them to reduced fuel and reduced weapon loads. A minute later, sonar operators added another piece to the puzzle. A possible submerged contact 80 nautical miles away. Its acoustic signature, a Type 039 diesel-electric submarine. Except it was making noise like a cement mixer. Any competent submarine crew would have been ashamed. The Chinese weren't just posturing, they were attempting a coordinated, multi-domain intimidation campaign, using equipment that belonged in a naval museum. Surface ships from the 1990s, carrier jets that couldn't carry full loadouts, and a submarine so loud it might as well have been screaming its coordinates over AM radio. This wasn't strategy, it was bullying. And bullies only succeed when the other side is weak or scared. The Americans were neither. By 9:37, the Nimitz flight deck erupted into organized chaos, the kind only American carriers have truly mastered. FA-18E Super Hornets from VFA-14 Top Hatters launched at 45-second intervals, a ballet of power and precision that Chinese ski jump carriers could only daydream about. The 1st Division of Super Hornets climbed past 15,000 feet, their AN/APG-79 ESA radars tracking the incoming J-15s at extreme range. The mismatch was almost unfair. The APG-79's thousands of TR modules could track dozens of targets at once. Meanwhile, the J-15's outdated mechanical radar scanned back and forth like a lighthouse, broadcasting their position to anyone listening. Without catapults, the J-15 started the fight with less fuel, fewer missiles, and reduced maneuver options. Meanwhile, every American fighter was tied into Link 16. If one jet saw a target, every jet saw it. The Chinese were effectively fighting blindfolded. Then the EA-18G Growlers entered the arena. Their ALQ-99 jamming pods began degrading Chinese radar and comms from almost 100 miles away. Ghost targets bloomed across Chinese displays. Real aircraft vanished. 4 American jets looked like 12, then 20. The Americans formed a perfected multi-altitude wall. 35,000 feet, 25,000 feet, 15,000 feet, 3 layers of overlapping engagement zones. The Chinese formation remained clumped together, forced to rely on visual confirmation because their data links could not maintain distributed coordination. At 9:43, an RC-135V rivet joint relayed intercepted communications. Darkstar reports Chinese pilots requesting permission for aggressive maneuvers. Repeat, requesting clearance to buzz U.S. ships. American pilots found this hysterical. By the time the Chinese got permission for anything, the tactical map would have changed twice. At 9:47, the Chinese destroyer made its boldest move. Its Type 346A radar switched to fire control mode, locking onto the USS Nimitz. In naval warfare, this is the electronic equivalent of pointing a loaded gun at someone's head. Princeton's crew reacted instantly but professionally. Their own fire control radars stayed in standby, but the ship's 122 missiles were ready. SM-6s, SM-2s, and more. If needed, the Chinese destroyer would last 5 seconds. The lock lasted exactly 30 seconds, long enough for propaganda, not long enough to trigger U.S. self-defense. Moments later, a J-15 attempted a close-pass intimidation maneuver, a fighter pilot thump. The American pilot, Top Gun trained, simply rolled inverted, pulled behind the Chinese fighter, and held a perfect firing solution for 3 full seconds. One squeeze of the trigger and the J-15 would have been a fireball. But discipline held. Meanwhile, the Type 039 submarine made its fatal mistake. At 9:51, it raised its snorkel to recharge batteries. Tau, subsurface contact bearing 159, range 15,000 yards, snorkeling, probable Type 039, loud as hell. The Princeton had been tracking it for an hour. If fighting started, an ASROC would end it in under 12 seconds. The Chinese forces had trapped themselves in a perfect kill box. Carrier northwest, destroyer west, submarine southwest. If war broke out, none would survive the first 5 minutes. And then the Americans decided to demonstrate exactly why. At 14:30, the USS Nimitz launched nearly everything that could fly. 48 aircraft roared off the deck in the biggest single carrier air power surge in years. Super Hornets, Growlers, Hawkeyes. The sky turned dark with American steel. The Growlers hit first. Their jamming turned Chinese radar screens into abstract paintings. Nothing made sense. Everything looked like a threat. Then came the ace card. A Virginia-class attack submarine surfaced 6 nautical miles from Shandong after shadowing the Chinese for 8 days undetected. Chinese lookouts watched in shock as the black hull rose like a breaching whale. Photos were taken, egos shattered. Then after 90 seconds, the submarine slipped beneath the waves again. Message delivered. We own the undersea domain, completely. In the air, the J-15s were nearly out of fuel. Their ski jump launches meant short endurance. Hard maneuvers burned even more. American fighters had them cold every time. Every dogfight ended with an FA-18 in firing position and a J-15 running home. By 1623, the Shandong group began retreating. Chinese officials later claimed the exercise had concluded as planned. But everyone knew the truth. They had come to intimidate. They had tried to posture. They had attempted to claim waters that weren't theirs. Instead, they received a demonstration of why the South China Sea remains, unofficially, America's sixth Great Lake. Subscribe for more and bye for now.